From Synozur, this is Polaris. I'm Chris McNulty. More people than ever are turning to modern marketing techniques to engage their communities. For professional services, especially the legal industry, many are embracing the opportunities for influencer marketing and thought leadership. How can professional services businesses stay ahead in this rapidly evolving market? This is Polaris. Welcome to Polaris Pathways. I'm your host, Chris McNulty, Head of Strategic Markets at Synozur. Synozur is an advisory agency focused on transforming business for our clients, navigating the complexities of transformation and strategic planning with ease. Today, we're looking at emerging trends in legal and professional services marketing. Our guest, Dennis Meador, is the CEO and founder of the Legal Podcast Network. Dennis started his first company at 14 years old and has been an entrepreneur for much of his life. He loves working with other businesses and has over 20 years working with and advising the legal industry. A year ago, he started the Legal Podcast Network. So today, we're talking to Dennis about the rise in modern marketing for professional services. Let's define our terms and our data points. The tools and techniques we're talking about today have grown much more common in the era of what's called Web3. Web3 is an initiative that was first defined by Ethereum co-founder Gavin Wood in 2014. Web3 began about 10 years ago and is still running, and it refers to newer internet technologies that are decentralized and focus on user ownership. So if you're thinking about things like blockchain, crypto, NFTs, even podcasts, those all can be considered to be part of Web3. And importantly, the tools for how you engage Web3 technologies are equally decentralized. It's person to person. It's based on meme culture. And it's much more focused on influencer marketing than the top-down mass market approaches that you may have seen elsewhere. Now, that's not to say there aren't some really large players across the world of Web3 technologies. SiriusXM, Apple, Spotify all have critical roles for influencing podcasts. Goldman Sachs and other more traditional investment firms are backing and sponsoring many of the predominant crypto exchanges. So for Web3 marketing, whether you're talking about meme culture, crypto, podcasts, or influencer marketing, is reaching the professional services world. It's new territory, but offers the possibility of forging more personal relationships amongst a business and its extended stakeholders. Now, a study by Edelman and LinkedIn revealed that 55% of decision makers use thought leadership content to vet the organizations they're working with. 9 out of 10 decision makers and C-suite executives are much more likely to be receptive to a company that produces high-quality thought leadership. So, I'm really excited to be able to bring Dennis onto Polaris. Let's go. So today in Polaris, I am thrilled to be joined by Dennis Meador, who is the CEO of the Legal Podcast Network. So Dennis, welcome to the show.
Good to be here.
And I know you're coming all the way from Belize. And on the internet, everyone's next door, but you are the first guest we've had from Belize. What's the weather like down there today?
It's nice. Basically, we either have a little bit of rain or a lot of sunshine. That's, kind of the weather here. We might get a little bit of rain through the day, but for the most part, we're in what's called high season. Uh-huh. So it stays about 75-ish and a nice breeze most of the time. And then we get a little bit of rain here and there.
Yeah, it's definitely different here in the Pacific Northwest. Dennis, could you share a little bit about kind of yourself and your background and the journey that's brought you here today?
Sure. I'm a lifelong entrepreneur, I guess you could say. First business at 14, then coming back to it, my first LLC, I want to say I was maybe 20. But I always had ways of making money throughout my teens. And then, like I said, I had a business and then basically got into marketing and advertising. I went to school for theology. So had a couple of years in pastoral theology. And while I was doing that, I took a job at a telemarketing company. And the division that made the most money were the guys who were selling ads in police magazines. So I went over to that division, became number one salesperson, became the manager, saw it grow by like 60% up uptick in revenue. And I really like this marketing stuff. Took a job doing hospital patient handbooks and all kinds of different paper stuff until the early 2000s. And so I had began working with attorneys at that time, early 2000s, because personal injury attorneys were early adopters and spending money on pay-per-click and things like that. I've had a few different agencies. I've had a social agency. I've had a text agency. I've had a couple of pure marketing branding agencies, SEO agency, and now this podcasting agency. So it's been a journey.
My parents were both attorneys. They met in law school at St. John's in New York, and it is really hard for me to imagine my dad ever hopping onto a microphone, but clearly it's a trend. Why do you think podcasting has become more important for lawyers of late?
Well, lawyers are, especially small law firms, are always looking for a way to differentiate themselves. There's been a huge commoditization of the industry as a whole, really because of the internet, because of directories, and because of the way Google lists things. And so, attorneys are looking for ways to market themselves. And unfortunately, most of them aren't very tech-savvy individuals. So the way that we present it, one is they're going to these, they're reading these newsletters from different people, or they're going to these conferences, and they're being told, you should have a podcast, you should have a podcast. A lot of the ones we work with, some of them can barely turn on their computer, let alone do editing and do all the different stuff that you would need to do to have a podcast. And so we just present it in a way where it's like, if you were answering questions across the desk from a potential client, we're going to send you the questions, 7 to 10 questions. It's going to be on a content plan. And so because we present the marketing in a way that makes sense to them, they're not just like talking about what they had for dinner and shooting the breeze on the microphone. Once they understand, okay, this is what this does for me, it helps grow my authority, it helps grow my thought leadership. And then we can take and use that and just disseminate it and distribute it tons of different ways from there.
I know from my years at Microsoft, the legal industry is fascinating because, especially in a world of generative AI, there is just so much unstructured content, case law and briefs and so on and so forth. But the legal industry is, in my experience, been a late adopter of many technologies. When you look at issues like the need to control blind subpoenas, it's a reason why law firms, especially the largest ones, have kept a lot of information in on-premises environments as long as possible, although most have moved to the cloud in some way, shape, or form. So with that late adoption thing, it's just fascinating to me to see attorneys focusing more on podcasts. Could you expand a bit about, for all of the professional services in all of the podcast rooms in the world, why attorneys?
Well, I've worked with attorneys for 21 years. That's been my specialty, taking SEO, taking websites to them, taking different types of marketing to them. And so for me, it's a natural thing. I love working with attorneys. They tend to work from places of logic. And, I don't enjoy sales tactics, using sales to manipulate, emotional selling, all of that, what would your practice be like if I could bring you 5 new cases a month sort of, selling techniques? With attorneys, you just pretty much say, here's who we are, here's what we do, here's how we do it. What are your thoughts? Okay, fair enough. Have you considered this? Have you thought? And you can use and have a logical discussion with them, and they don't typically get angry. You can a lot of times bring to the point where they're like, you know what? That makes sense. I'll give you a shot. And so that's what I like about them, is because the vast majority of them tend to work in places of logic. They tend to be comfortable with discussions and being open to having their point kind of picked apart and then brought back to them. It just lends for me for a lot more openness to different opportunities.
Historically, law firms were, in some cases, not permitted by regulation to engage in anything that feels like advertising or modern marketing. We've definitely seen more and more of that over the years. Why do modern marketing techniques matter for professional services and for law firms in particular?
Well, I think, number one, because we've moved away from bought advertising to earned advertising, or bought eyes to earned eyes. And yes, you can still do pay-per-click and buy and do all of that. But I'm just saying, as a foundation, if you don't have a marketing plan that is that understands the importance of earning the eyes now. Because, I mean, we're not talking about a television set with 3 channels on it anymore. We're not talking about 2 town newspapers, the regular one and the alternative one. We're literally talking about opening up our phone and being connected to, on my LinkedIn, 3,000 professionals that want to put something in front of me, going into my Instagram and 12,000 people listening to what I'm posting on my Instagram, and then me seeing what they're 3 or 4,000 people I'm paying attention to in one for one reason or another. So they have to break through the clutter, and they have to earn the eyeballs. Even if they buy the eyeballs, they still have to be earned. And I think that they see that. They've got the phones in their hands, number one. And then number two, they're not early adopters, but when they see that others around them are using something and it's successful for them, then they're much more open to it. Mm-hmm. So they're like, oh, well, it's working for him, and he's in this market, so they go to these conferences. So they're like, maybe it would work for me. And so they're willing to kind of try something new.
Yeah, so I imagine there's a little bit of needing to kind of get them over the line, although in my experience, I've yet to meet a lawyer who doesn't love talking. But
exactly. We tell them we harness their innate ability to their own benefit. And that's just another way of saying we're going to record you while you talk and make marketing out of it. But it sounds a lot fancier that way.
Let's talk a little bit more about your firm. How are you helping lawyers embrace, 21st century engagement and branding techniques?
By making it super simple and turnkey for them. That's really the only way. We're always there's 3 things we're always looking for: doing things better, doing things faster, and doing things with less friction points. And so that's like how I am always like looking at my business. How can we do this better, faster, and less friction? And so with our clients, like when we started, we used to give 3 pieces of content for each published show. Mm-hmm. So it would be, we would put out like a reel before, a reel right around the same time, and then a reel after. And they were thrilled with that, to have a show and 3 pieces of content. We're now at one show, we're producing over 20 pieces of content. If they're doing 2 shows a month, we're producing 60 pieces of content, 3 a day or 2 a day for 30 days. If they're doing a weekly show, we're producing 90 pieces of content, 3 pieces a day every day. And so but for them, each set of that is 20 minutes of them talking. So with 20 minutes of them talking, we're able to create a podcast, 10 to 12 shorts or reels, 10 to 12 audiograms, 2 to 3 pages of content for their website. And so we just make it very easy, very simple, and no friction for them, so that they show up, they get the questions ahead of time. We've already identified their ideal client profile, their jurisdictional profile, their brand profile. So we built the show around them. The show is branded to them, their colors, their everything. And then our hosts know who they are. Are they high energy? Right. Are they, sort of intense? And our hosts know, okay, this is how I need to interact with this client. So we just basically try to set everything up precise. That's what we try to do for our clients, create this seamless sort of come in, sit down, talk, enjoy the moment, and then everything else is done.
So it sounds like you're removing the barriers so that
exactly.
Apart from how do I record, how do I produce, how do I distribute, they just need to show up and be experts. I like that. I wanted to just follow up on something because I think it's true for attorneys, but it's going to be true for almost anyone. If Andy Warhol were still with us, he would probably be saying in the future, everyone's going to be a podcaster for 15 minutes. And you were talking about specialization and jurisdiction. How important is it to focus on particular areas and particular geographies when you're crafting that podcaster persona?
Extremely important for our clients. If I'm a divorce attorney, I'm typically working in maybe 1 to 5 counties. I don't want to drive much further to file things, or if we end up in court, end up going to litigation, I don't want to drive 2 hours for that court case. So they typically have a 1 to 5 county jurisdictional area that they work in. And so when we create all the pieces of content on the front and even in studio for YouTube, things like that, then we want to do that based on the counties, based on the major towns in those, so that when people in those markets are asking question-based, they're doing a question-based search, now that attorney has the opportunity to be the one to answer that either through video, through a short, or through something on their website content.
I love hearing about those success stories from you. Could you expand on that a little bit more for our audience?
Sure. So we have one of our clients. So, it's funny. My expertise has been in kind of that local attorney, that local divorce, local criminal, local PI, local estate planning, local SSDI, local employment. There's about 10 or 12 local categories, 250 markets that fit our market size. Our market penetration at 100% is like 2,500 clients. And we're never going to get there with what we're doing. But that being said, what we've learned is there's a lot of international or very highly specialized law firms that need to get their message out beyond their jurisdiction. So now we find, for example, I'll give you two of them. One of them is we have a guy who is a specialist on FDA imports. And so he does he knows the laws and the stuff with FDA. And so businesses get a hold of him, and if they get caught up, he'll help them. And he has come from basically having no social presence to just doing the podcast, doing the reels, and just growing and growing. And I'm seeing people in his inbox because, we work together. I'm seeing people in his inbox. I'm seeing people comment. I'm seeing things happen that he never in a million years would have gotten in front of if he wasn't dealing with these, with the tariffs right now. He's talking about getting in the studio, talking about the tariffs. Another guy, even more niched, in my opinion, he only works with, and I say guy, it's a law firm, and usually our clients are 1 to 10s. I want to say he has him and 1 or 2 other attorneys with him and then a support staff. But anyway, all he does is works with employers who want to do their own in-house medical insurance for their employees. And he helps them set up their own insurances.
Okay.
And so, again, it's not the guy, but he's not the guy that is just going to send out, flyers to people locally. There's only a very small group of people that need his help. But when they do need his help, they start searching. Now he's talking about it. He's podcasting about it. He's got these videos about it, a minute video, 3 to 5 minute video, a 17 to 20 minute podcast. And so now they very quickly, because they're so micro niche, they're very quickly able to rise up to the top in content and cultivate new relationships and grow their practice.
Huh. Yeah, it sounds like that would really also help them connect with the right people. And the other side is not spend time connecting with people who they can't help.
Exactly. It's exactly what we talk about. Who is your ideal client profile? Let us help you reach them because, even you look at divorce, right? You could just say I'm a divorce lawyer, but do you want people calling you for a $500 simple divorce? Do you want people calling you that are, only been married 2-3 years, not a lot of assets, and they're trying to get the cheapest divorce they can and they don't really want to argue? Or you want to go with, custody issues and assets and, high net worth individuals where you're going to get 30, 50,000 out of one client versus 500 to 2,500. And some are happy to work with the 500 to 2,500 people, and some are targeting that high net worth person.
In my experience, the amount of preparation you put in correlates to kind of the quality of what the output looks like. When someone's getting started, about how long does it take to develop the first couple of podcasts or pieces of content?
So when they come on board, we want to, within 2 to 3 days, have them meeting with our onboarding person, which is Tracy. She has been interviewing attorneys for content purposes for over 10 years, interviewed well over 1,000 firms. And so she meets with them and she finds out their ideal client profile, like I talked about, their jurisdictional profile, and then what we call their brand profile. And then we use that to put together their first set of questions. We say, do you want to do an hour? Or do you want to do 2 hours? If you do an hour, we're going to shoot 2 shows. If you're going to do 2 hours, we're going to shoot 4 shows. We usually shoot about 20 minutes or so, then take a break, 20 minutes, take a break, and so on through the 2 hours. But because we know who their ideal client profile is, we get their branding from their website or their marketing person or whatever sends it to us. and we know who they are. We've spent time with them, and we all know attorneys, and we've known them for so long. We're able to be in that studio within about 10 days after that initial onboarding. So we like to have their first show put out within about 4 to 6 weeks, depending on how fast they approve things. And we've just tweaked our contract a little bit to allow us to speed up that process. If they don't get back to us, it's auto posting, things like that. Otherwise, you get locked up and they get busy or whatever, but we just try to create that way. So yeah, from sign up to first piece of first video going out, we try to put it right at 4 weeks. If they're dragging their feet a little bit, it might be about 6 weeks.
That's still pretty fast. And when someone's getting started, like to establish that presence, how many pieces of content should they have like in the hopper before they unveil themselves? Is it just one, or would you say you should get a couple and then block?
Most people have nothing. I mean, we're creating a lot of the channels for our clients and building them from scratch, because we can connect up to 10 outlets. So you've got Google My Business. Here's the critical ones. Google My Business, if we can run that, because if you start pumping content to that, then you'll rank higher in the maps and listings. You already know this, but just for those who might not know. So it kind of allows like that posting. Facebook, Instagram, our Instagram is fairly important, not vital, but Facebook is vital. Instagram is fairly vital. LinkedIn is pretty vital. Those 4 are the ones, and then a YouTube channel we create for them as well. So those are the 5, but then also like X, Blue Sky, and X, Twitter, Blue Sky, Pinterest.
Really?
Pinterest is one that they're building these boards. We're building boards with their reels. And so as people who are on Pinterest are only on, they live on Pinterest.
Oh, completely. I have friends who'll be like, did you see what I just posted? And I have to ask them, where? Like Pinterest? And frankly, I'm not a Pinterest person. And then I'll go in and be like, wow, there's 30 new things. And it's sort of fascinating. I
mean, Pinterest is one of those things, like I talk about like digital languages. And one of the things that we do with our own clients is we find out what their digital language is. Right. Because, for example, if we can't ever reach them by leaving them a voicemail, but we send them a text message, they get right back, then guess what? We're going to primarily send text messages. And so we find out what their digital language is, where they're comfortable, where they spend time. And then we use that, to our advantage to be able to stay in contact with our clients. Yes. But then we also do that with their clients. They'll be like, my clients aren't on Pinterest. And I'm like, no, you're not on Pinterest. But you don't know if your clients are on Pinterest or not. And so even if 80% of Pinterest has no interest at all in what you're doing, that 20% that do probably would never know anything about you if you didn't post on Pinterest, because that's where they spend their time. That's the language they speak.
Well, I think it's really fascinating watching this unfold. I've spoken before about kind of the interplay of Web3 and modern marketing, and whether you're engaging in blockchain or crypto or many of the pieces of Web3, most people aren't. The interaction model for how I think you need to, create a brand, be able to reach influencers, and it's more one-to-one or one-to-few engagements instead of that traditional bought media, top-down, blanket the world and hope for the best. Focusing on, podcasts and marketing in the legal industry, what are a couple of things that the audience might not know? You're the expert in this area.
I think number one, what people might not realize is podcasting in many ways can be more of a means to an end than the end itself. I think some people think, well, I mean, if I have a podcast, how am I going to get 50,000 people to listen to each episode? And it's like, well, first of all, that doesn't really matter. And let's be honest, if 50,000 people downloaded your episodes in whatever way or watched them on YouTube or whatever, but you didn't get a call or a client out of it, then frankly, it was a waste of money. So it would be much better to have 50 total watches and listens, but 10 of them call you and 5 or 6 of them hire you.
Right.
So I think the metrics that we look at in any marketing nowadays is if I'm a professional, I don't look at eyeballs or cost per M or CPM or all the other stuff that I like to talk about because I read an article 2 years ago, and so now I'm a marketing expert. It's like, no, work backwards from the client. And how many clients did you get from this program? And that's where the success comes in. I think that's definitely one thing that is just the way of looking at marketing, because they're used to, there's 200,000 of these yellow pages that are going out, or there's 50,000 people watching this show, and I'm going to have a commercial. And they just have that kind of old world thinking where it's like, no, it's not about the number of people that see it. It's about the number of people that respond to it and become your client through it.
Yes, it's one of the other podcasts that I work with is one of the Microsoft podcasts, where we'll typically have about 5,000 listeners for an episode, which is a good number. We put some investment in how we promote it. The goals there are really to just drive education and engagement. It's not directly transactional. And when you compare it to what we do with our event strategy, we'll spend $250,000 or $500,000 Microsoft will put into like a major conference so that the audience, 4,000 or 5,000 people, will come in and listen to a keynote for an hour. There's other things going on, but that's $250,000, $500,000 for an hour of attention for 5,000 people. And with podcasts, we're getting that for a massive fraction of that. Okay, let's start bringing this into the future. What do you see is coming up next for lawyers and other professional services staff who are trying to engage new audiences and establish their presence?
I think what needs to happen is lawyers need to not wait. They need to stop waiting, because the ones that are successful are the ones that jump out there. And especially in the earned environment that we're in, it really, like for us, we're like, hey, we'll put you on up to 10 social media and post on all 10 of those, all the pieces of content, and we'll move them around. And I mean, you'll have a very robust social media situation going. But if we didn't say, we'll set you up a Blue Sky account, we'll make you they would never do it. Mm-hmm. And so I think like attorneys and professionals, whatever, small business owners tend to wait and be like on the back end of the adoption curve.
Right.
And if they could just get up closer to the front end of the adoption curve, then they would put themselves at an even bigger advantage long term. It's just like you think about SEO. People that started doing SEO in 03, 05, 07, man, by the time 15, 17, 18, everybody was fighting for SEO. By the time that rolled around, the people that had domain age and great content, they were still showing up and killing it.
Right.
But because they were early adopters. And I think it's the same thing. There's going to come, because the cycle, I've seen it the same my entire career. Here's the cycle, the social media cycle, the earned media cycle. It goes like this. We either have a new product or a new outlet, i.e. TikTok, and we're going to give away as much as we can. We're going to give eyeballs away. We're going to grow your audience. We're going to get it really big, and everything's going to be great. And everyone's like, the early ones go in, and they're like, this is great. But then guess what happens? Then they go, okay, now we got to monetize. They pull the brakes back a little bit. Hopefully that didn't, my sound effects sometimes, but they pull the brakes back, and everyone goes, what's wrong with LinkedIn? What's wrong with TikTok? It just isn't what it, Facebook sucks now, blah, blah. And everyone's like, hold on. They give you all that free marketing. Well, I built an audience and it's like, no. Slow down. Understand you're playing in their league. And if you're going to play in their league, if they change the rules and they put the rim at 11 foot, then you better learn to shoot it at 11 foot.
Yeah.
If they make the football field 120 yards, then the football field's 120 yards. You're still doing well, making money, making a living at this. And if you don't like it, you can leave the field and maybe go find another field. There's a lot of people on LinkedIn. I know in my personal network of at least 5 people that used to be lawyers and are now full-time LinkedIn content helpers, or they're consultants for the legal industry to be good at LinkedIn. And this is what they do for a living. If you learn to embrace the next thing and the next thing and the next thing and not be afraid of it, and maybe you're going to waste some time, but you've wasted money on marketing. You've wasted money on this, money on that. So I think that that's the biggest thing is in the future is being open to embracing the new things. I also think, and here's something, I think that we're all going to create not just our own clone of our own voice, but maybe a clone of our own personage and a clone of our, like, you can create your own, like, kind of the way that you think and the way that you write and the way that you interact with people. And I think that that's going to become a very gray area. And I think it's going to be just like auto posting. There's going to be a clear line of delineation where a portion are going to accept this like cloned, created content from our persona, and then a portion are never going to accept any of it and only accept us.
Yeah.
And so we have to either decide. Go ahead.
Yeah. So it's interesting. It's something I've written about is the personalization of AI. And if you look at digital twin technology, which began as a way of replicating really complex machinery like jet engines in a virtual space so you could test and simulate and see if you could diagnose a problem without ripping the engine apart. And what you're seeing with AI is we're starting to see the convergence, that ability for me to be able to generate something that knows some of what I know and can respond on my behalf to well understood questions and answers. Moving afield from that, Dennis, I'd love to hear from my guests about something that you've read or seen or heard or watched lately. It doesn't have to be tied to the world of legal marketing. Something that really has captivated your attention.
So it's actually a program, and I hope that's okay, because, I saw this question, and it's something that has just revolutionized my work, and then I've given it to my director of fulfillment, which she runs the fulfillment team. It's revolutionized her work. I find that I'm getting as much done in a day as it used to take me a week.
Okay.
And it's a program called SideCoach.AI.
All right.
And it's another AI program, and it essentially is supposed to be like a business coach accountability partner, but it's all done through you talking. You can hook it up to text, and then you can just reply back with voice text, and it'll, send the message, or I do it on my computer. I keep it right here, and I just literally just go and I click the button, and I'm like, I need to take care of this, this, and this, and this, and this. And I just like kind of like brain dump, and then it organizes everything, puts it in thoughts, and then says, okay, do we think we can get this done this week with these steps? And can we get this done? So for me to sit down and write what I need to do, my brain freezes up. But when I can just talk about what I need to do, I can literally kind of like outline everything, and then it organizes all my thoughts.
So this has been great, Dennis. What's next for you, and what's the best way for our audience to stay in touch?
Well, what's next for us? We're launching version 2.0. Like I said, we originally started with 3 pieces of content per show. Now we're putting out about 30 pieces of content per show. And we brought in people to help things get set up. And so that is done on our fulfillment side, which is going to then allow us to expand. We'll probably stay with attorneys this year, although we are open to working with other people with our product. So I always believe in driving deep and then going wide. So right now we're driving deep, getting all of our systems, getting all, to where we know, okay, because I firmly believe this is a company we're going to serve probably somewhere around 1,500 to 2,000 companies. I believe that we're going to become kind of that like digital translator, if you will, for the professional white collar industry. That's my goal. And then how can they reach me? The easiest way, our website, thelegalpodcastnetwork.com. I put some of my content up there. So thelegalpodcastnetwork.com. You can also find me on LinkedIn, Dennis, with 2 N's, R, Meador, like a meadow, but with an R on the end instead of a W, and then Junior, Dennis R. Meador Jr.
And so for those of you listening in your car, you don't need to pull over to the side of the road. We'll make sure we have
right now.
All of those links will get into the show notes. Dennis Meador is CEO of the Legal Podcast Network, amongst other entrepreneurial ventures. So Dennis, thank you very much for joining us here on Polaris.
Absolutely. I have thoroughly enjoyed it.
Up next on Polaris Events, this year is heating up with more and more events carrying us forward through spring. Here are some we're watching. On March 11th, Transforming Your Digital Workplace, This is an event we are co-hosting with our partners at Ecumena. For more details, you can visit us at aka.synozur.com/DW. From the Association for Intelligent Information Management, the AI plus IM Summit 2025. This will be held in Atlanta, Georgia, March 31st through April 2nd at the Hyatt Regency. And as a member of the board of directors, I'm really excited to be able to engage the community for the best in information management and artificial intelligence. You can learn more at aim.org. Coming up next, the Microsoft 365 Community Conference. This will be May 5th through 8th at the MGM Grand in Las Vegas. Jeff Teeper and Jairus Bataro will be keynoting for Microsoft, along with many other speakers from Microsoft, Synozur, partners, customers, and more, including me. You can learn more and register at nextgen365events.com. And as we're heading into summer, Synozur will be sponsoring and speaking at TechCon 365 Seattle. That's June 23rd through 27th at the Seattle Conference Center. You can learn more at techcon365.com. We'll have links to all of that and more in the show notes. You can learn more at synozur.com/events, and we'll add more events throughout the year. Of course, if you have an upcoming event you'd like us to promote on Polaris, please get in touch and we'd be happy to include it. Well, that's going to wrap up another episode. I'd like to thank our guest, Dennis Meador, for joining us and sharing his thoughts on modern marketing for professional services and law firms. We'd encourage you to check out our show page for links to all we talked about today and more. Visit us at polaris.synozur.com. Send us your questions and feedback for the Synozur team. You can reach us via email at polaris@synozur.com. Remember to rate, review, and tell all your friends about the show. Follow the show wherever you get your favorite podcasts. Thanks for listening. I'm Chris McNulty, and this has been Polaris, a show that charts the course for business and technology transformation from Synozur. Learn more at synozur.com. See you next time.